Come on, Livingston, we're gonna go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We're gonna go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across. It's turned in. It's Pittman who's got it. Livingston leads.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead.
Man, you score.
If we march to
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livy, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name's Andy. Today I'm joined by Angus and Ewan. Today we bring you a very special episode as our build-up to next weekend's Betfred Cup Final begins. You can listen to this episode and all our other episodes on your preferred podcast streaming sites. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube, plus loads more, so just search Talk Livy. Follow us and subscribe if you can, so you won't miss out. This week, we look back at the St Mirren game. After back-to-back defeats for the Lions, we look to get back to winning ways in Paisley. We discuss all the major talking points from the game. As we start to look at next weekend's Big Cup Final, we start our build-up with a bumper exclusive interview with club legend and League Cup winner with the club in 2004, Roddy McKenzie. An interview not to be missed as we delve deep into his career with the Lions.
First of all, thanks for a great introduction, Andy. It's time now to take a look back at our weekend game with St Mirren. With a top six spot not yet confirmed and with our opponents right on our tails, the battle this weekend was a huge league game. Livy came off the back of back-to-back league defeats for the first time under new manager David Martindale, so getting a positive result was a must with the cup final just over the horizon. A draw in the end, we maintained that gap of 5 points. A good day's work, guys.
Yeah, just to clarify what Angus is saying, it took Andy approximately 2.5 hours to do the intro today and the amount of mistakes he was making. So, we've eventually got to reviewing the St Mirren game. But yeah, on the game itself, I think we all kind of predicted it was going to be a tough afternoon and a very tight affair. All the games so far, it's only been the one goal in it. And we got off to an excellent start. Bit fortunate with the goal. It's a good delivery by Sibbald, and the ball's ended up in the back of the net. And I think our gif of Cheb for own goals has gone down quite well on social media as well, which is excellent to see. Cheb deserves some credit. And it was a very tight first half, very few chances. St Mirren got the equaliser. You could say put a bit more pressure on him, close it down a little bit quicker. But to be fair, it's an excellent strike by McPherson. Nothing much Robbie can do. And there, again, wasn't much else in the first half. I think we had a few really good deliveries across the kind of 6-yard box. A few from Josh Mullen. There was a brilliant one from Serrano, which was begging for someone to get on the end of. I think both Riley and Forrest, if they gamble, maybe get on the end of it. But second half, we made a change in shape, went to 3 at the back with Sinky coming on and played with kind of 2 in behind Riley to start off with and then Jet as the game moved on. And I think for spells in the second half, I think if there was a team maybe slightly edging it, it was maybe us. Josh got in behind once and Annex dealt with the cross quite well, but again, nothing really clear cut. Robbie's had one save to make second half from Tate from distance. And I think, to be honest, a draw was a very fair result. Very little in the game. It was hard fought, very few chances, just as we kind of expected. But it stops that little mini rut, 2 defeats on the bounce, and gives us a positive result going into what's biggest game in the club's recent history next week at Hampden. And it also, I think, it gives us that little cushion. You're looking at St Johnstone. I think they're going to struggle to make up 9 points to overtake us in the last 3 games. So I think that almost secures a top 6 spot for us, which would be terrific for the football club.
Yeah, I think 2 very similar match teams, like we expected. I don't think there's a lot between the sides. Both very similar styles they play today. Both worked hard with probably little quality in the end. I agree. I felt we edged it on half chances. I can't remember there really being what I would call a proper chance for either side, where there was half chances here and there. I felt like, as you mentioned, a few balls across the 6-yard box or over across the goal line and things, but nothing really clear cut for either side. I think a draw was about right. And something, I think we mentioned it last week when we were doing our preview for the game, that I think a point we probably would have been happy with to begin with anyway. It maintains that gap, as Angus said earlier on, 5 points with 4 games to go until the split. I agree with you, and I said last week I felt that we were already there in terms of top 6, but I think that point almost definitely secures it now. And there's a few changes to the team, a few eyebrows raised. It'll be interesting to see what team we decide to go with for that big cup final.
Yeah, definitely. Just to go on about the team, obviously Robbie McCrory came in for Striek. We also had Marvin Bartley and Scott Robinson dropped out of the squad completely. Obviously, we know about Robinson coming off injured last week against Dundee United. Bartley seems to be more so just resting him entirely, not risking him at all. Perhaps that's because of how big a pitch Hampden is just to give him the best chance to recuperate over what has been a busy period. Alan Forrest also came back into the squad, which I was particularly excited to see because I think he is somebody who's probably had to be quite patient for the time that he's been at the club in recent weeks, especially under David Martindale. How do you guys think Forrest did today? I know it wasn't the best of attacking displays from the club, but did you see enough from him that you kind of think that he is getting kind of closer to being a starter, or do you think this coming weekend against in the cup final he will lose out because he didn't make as much of an impact?
Watching the game, I thought most of our threat first half came down the right-hand side. I don't think Forrest or Serrano saw the ball on the far side a lot in the first 45 minutes. I'd messaged my dad at half-time and actually said, I think we need to almost try and mix it up a little bit and try and move the ball out to the far side a little bit more as well and try and get Forrest and Serrano into the game. But to be honest, with wingers, a lot of it is how often you see the ball in terms of the impact that you're going to make in the game. And let's be honest, Forrest didn't see an awful lot of the ball for the 55 minutes he was on the park. So he's a bit unfortunate in that sense. But he, because of that, didn't have a real effect on the game, to be honest.
Something I think with Forrest that's probably went against them in kind of recent weeks is perhaps Martindale's favouring players who have that wee bit more kind of grit and determination kind of on the ball. And up against Richard Tate, I think he kind of put himself about quite a fair amount. Andy, what do you think about kind of that kind of side of his game?
Yeah, I think as Ewan said, it's a very difficult game that to assess his performance because he didn't see a lot of the ball, but he did track back and he did defend well when he had to, and he did put himself about. I wouldn't say he done much attacking wise, as Ewan said, that a lot of it came down the right, and Jim Goodwin made a couple of wee tweaks to his system at half time to sort of stop that. And again, although Goodwin made that change, I don't think we really changed our setup in terms of maybe moving over at the left and playing more down the left-hand side. So he wasn't really in the game in terms of attacking performance-wise, but again, it was difficult conditions. The wind was swirling. Not really a game for the connoisseur or a winger-type player, but I think he done okay in terms of defensively and putting himself about. But I don't expect him to start in the cup final, to be honest.
I think maybe something that obviously we've kind of touched on how we went kind of down the right hand side. Perhaps that might be because St Mirren kind of set up and they had Ilkay Durmas as like a left wing back. Perhaps they saw that was kind of an area to possibly be exploited. Obviously Durmas is much more known for his kind of attacking side, and perhaps that is the reason why the likes of Devlin and that had much more joys, because he hasn't got that kind of defensive mind. But yeah, the kind of way that things have been going, I don't really see Forest kind of starting, especially with Bartley coming back into the squad. In my personal opinion, I think Craig Sibbald was pretty great today. In the middle of the park, he was good on the ball. Probably one of our better players in terms of like us having possession, and of course puts himself about quite a lot as well. He'll probably be the one who is kind of drafted out to the left hand side, I would imagine, to allow Bartley to come back in. But other than that, who do you guys feel did stand out today? Has anybody else made like a claim to guarantee a starting position?
I do think Sibbald looks so much better when he's in the middle of the park rather than kind of shifted out wide. I think it allows him to just get more involved in the game, and I think he dictated spells in the first half. Had a good effort as well, which was saved from distance. So I do think Sibbald was quite productive. I thought Jason Holt looked more like himself. Obviously mentioned last week that he had a bit of an off day at Tannadice, and I thought he looked more productive, kind of battled, winning 50-50s in the middle of the park. As I say, touched on the likes of Josh and Nicky. If anything was going to happen, I think it was going to come down our right-hand side. The other one I thought had a decent first half in particular was Gavin Riley. Thought he held the ball in well at times, just kind of moved the ball on and started moving into space and kind of running in behind. I thought, considering he's had a pretty stop-start spell at Livingston with having to isolate and things like that, I think he looked quite good, and I would assume he would have came on last week for Robinson had it not been for the issues that he's had since he's joined the club. So in terms of guys that have played themselves into contention, I think the back four will probably make the starting team. There's obviously a decision about the goalkeeper. I think Robbie looked very steady today. Didn't have an awful lot to do, to be fair to him, but and I think Robinson will come back in. I think that's almost a certainty, and I think it'll be interesting to see the shape more than anything against St Johnstone, because we've constantly tweaked shape against St Johnstone in the 3 games previous this season. So I think whatever shape we start with will dictate the personnel that will play in that.
Something that happened the very first minute of the game. Once we kind of passed that minute mark, I turned to my parents and I was like, "Oh, that's us done better than last week already." And then Robbie McCrory does that goal kick that goes about 5 yards ahead of him. I was like, "Oh no, what have I done?" But thankfully, because touch wasn't the greatest. But yeah, I think you're spot on about that, and we'll definitely probably go on to talk about that a wee bit more when we'd have like a feature podcast coming soon during the week. Jace Kabaya, though, I think came on and he was probably getting himself into kind of decent positions now. He always kind of looks lively, and for a young player, I think he kind of gets himself kind of like stuck in about. For somebody so young and kind of fresh to the league, I think it's like very encouraging when he has came on. I don't think it was the best of games for him to come on to. It was a lot of balls that are going over the top, and the wind and the conditions were kind of making it hard for him to get in behind. Also kind of playing alongside Jet. Jet wasn't really kind of getting up towards him. Kind of, you even heard it from David Martindale calling him a big lazy, you know what. Don't
shy away from it. Angus bastard is what he said. We're not live commentating just now. We can say what we want. So yes, he referred to Jet as a lazy bastard basically when he was trying to go back for a corner.
Yeah, but other than that, I kind of think that again, Kabaya continues to look bright. What do you guys think about Jace?
Well, I mean, first of all, just to obviously go back to your first question, I think Ewan's right in terms of the back four. I thought Effie came in and you won't hear me saying this very often, but he added a little bit of composure to the back line compared to previous weeks. So I was quite happy with that. So I envisage the back four that played today will be the back four for the cup final. I think the big one is Robinson. I'm really desperate for him to be fit. I feel like Riley done a lot of running, but we lacked that focal point up front, and I think Robinson gives you that. that would be a massive boost for us going into the final. As much as Riley done well, he won a few fouls, he ran in behind today. I didn't think he played badly. I just feel like we lacked that focal point up front. On Kabaya, you're right. I think he adds that little bit of excitement, that little bit of unpredictability that we don't tend to have, or we've not had. Whether he comes in, I have my doubts, but he's certainly someone from the bench that can add that little bit, as I say, unpredictability. If we are chasing the game, he might come in and do something spectacular to get us back in the game next week. Hopefully it won't come to that. Hopefully we've got the game wrapped up before he has to come on.
I think Jay's is a bit unpredictable for Davy as well. Davy was very vocal in trying to tell Jays what to do. You could hear that even through the dodgy audio watching today's stream. So I think his comment that he made a wee while back that he needs to take paracetamol to coach Jays, I think it's just that inexperience and rawness. But as you say, he has that unpredictability, and you could see him. He was wanting to get on the ball and wanting to make things happen when he came on. But again, I'm with you, Andy. I don't see him starting next week. Such a big game for a young lad. But if it does come down to it and we're chasing the game and we need something a wee bit different, I'm sure he'll be an option off the bench for Davy to go to. But on the whole, we're reckoning that's a top 6 finish secured by that point.
I would probably think so. We're 5 points ahead of St Mirren. Are we 5 ahead of Dundee United or 6 ahead of Dundee United? Either way, I think Dundee United have got, I think their next 4 games, I think they have Hibs, Rangers and Aberdeen within that 4. I'm not sure if that's the correct order or whatnot. I can't see Aberdeen making up that 6-point gap in those 4 matches that they do have. Might cut it to like 3. At the same time, I could see us kind of continuing to get points on the board as well. So, yeah, I'm not usually somebody who likes to kind of like make claims before like it is kind of like definite or that. But the way that it is looking, we do kind of seem to be kind of settling for that kind of 5th place, and it's what we deserve for kind of this effort in this second half of the season in particular. St Mirren today, I think they'll probably join us. I think they are a wee bit better than Dundee United. I know Dundee United absolutely hammered us last week, but I do think that St Mirren have got kind of better players, so I think it will be us two who make up the final 2 spots in the top 6. But yeah, some great achievement if we do manage to keep a hold of it, only for the 3rd time in our history. It would eclipse last season because we've actually played the duration, like the entirety of like the 33 fixtures before the split as well. But yeah, I guess it's important for us to not be too reliant on it happening and hoping that Dundee United don't pick up points, and we've just got to keep on playing our game and do it ourselves, make it possible in our own hands.
I think it's important just to put out there that that's us now 1 point better off than we were last season, having played a game less. So I think there's clear progression there again this season. Hopefully we can build on it over the coming weeks and again beat our tally from sort of the first season in the league as well. I think that's got to be the next target. I think from when Gary Holt was obviously the gaffer, he always went on about beating the season before's tally. Well, we've done that this season, albeit last season was a shortened league campaign, but we've done it with a game less this season. So I think a huge credit to the club for yet again progressing. My feelings on the top 6. I said it last week, I feel like we're already there. But I think the one thing we've got to quickly discuss before we move on was the change of goalkeeper. McCrory came in kind of out the blue almost. I know that Stryek has struggled with his kicking and he had a bit of a struggle last week against Dundee United, but was that enough to drop him? And do you see that change sticking? Do you see McCrory staying in for the cup final? Was that awful harsh on Max?
I think everyone knows my thoughts on Robbie. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I would still maintain I think he's the better goalkeeper out of the 2, as controversial as that will be to a lot of our supporters. And I don't think he'd done a great deal wrong other than the Kilmarnock game where he did subsequently get dropped. I think he came in against Celtic and arguably made 2 or 3 crucial saves which got us a point. when he'd coming out the cold for that. And I do think the last 2 or 3 games Max had struggled with a few aspects of his game. A few of his decision making were a bit interesting to say the least, and as you say, his kicking game's not been great either. But obviously we don't see what they're like in training. They've made that decision to put Robbie back in between the sticks, and it's going to be a massive decision next week who they go with. But I think we've got 2 very good goalkeepers. I'm not overly concerned who goes in between the sticks, because I do think we've got 2 good goalkeepers there.
We kind of touched on it a wee bit in the group chat a wee bit before the game started, obviously when the team news came out. And looking back on kind of Striek's kind of recent performances, I think they've been quite erratic in many ways. Very early on, he's been, you go back to the St Johnstone game, there was a couple of instances where he was just, like, his positioning was pretty awful. He was being caught like outside of like our box, and that decision making wasn't the greatest. And obviously the kind of kicking incidents as well cost us a goal last weekend. Not entirely, to be fair, because we didn't clear the ball a few times after it, but perhaps Davies kind of looked at that, and perhaps he's kind of seen that the defence isn't properly settling because the goalkeeper's not settled, and he is making these kind of errors that are kind of making our defenders kind of hang back a wee bit and try and like cover up for that. Either way, it's not went well for us in the last couple of weeks in terms of that. So perhaps it might just be simply a kick up the backside for Striek to kind of get back into ways. As you say, we have got two good goalkeepers. The thing that kind of concerns me about McCrory always is the way he kind of like likes to catch the ball. He always likes to kind of like drop it down first before catching it, and it's cost us a couple of goals in a few instances. There was one against Hamilton last season, one against Kilmarnock this season. So like each keeper does have like, there is kind of like a positive to both of them that do outweigh the negatives. And either way, for either of them to be in goals next Sunday, I would be completely fine, to be honest. But I think if you're Striek, you'd be a little bit peeved off if you were dropped for the final, considering how influential he has been in that kind of 14-game run. Not that he played every single game of it, but has been a mainstay throughout. But as Ewan said, like, there may be stuff going on in training that we're not seeing, and they just kind of felt that it was the right time to kind of freshen things up. The goal that we conceded today, there's nothing McCrory can do about that. Just to touch on that, I think that Gary McPherson's an absolute tremendous player, and that's probably as good as a goal we might see this weekend. But yeah, McCrory, I think he didn't have an awful lot to do, but what was kind of better from him was that kind of organisation. You seen him make like kind of blocked like shots and crosses out for corners. He was straight out organising and that, and perhaps that's the thing that Davy Martindale's looking for more so, especially against St Johnstone next week, who are very like well set up at set pieces. We want that kind of commanding goalkeeper who is going to get things organised early on.
Yeah, we don't want to obviously get into the cup final too much. We're going to be bringing you a very special episode later in the week. But it's a good point on the road for us today against St Mirren. It keeps that sort of run going. It builds on that performance and keeps us in the top 6. A big game coming up. And obviously we've just spoke about goalkeepers, so we've got a big interview coming up with a very special legend, ex-goalkeeper, Livy Lion, Roddy McKenzie.
He was a cup final hero in 2004, a member of some incredible teams to play in the famous Amber and Black, and he has seen just about everything during his time with the club. We're delighted to bring you our first special guest to help us build up to Sunday's Betfred Cup Final. Ladies and gentlemen, we're delighted to introduce our exclusive interview with Roddy McKenzie. Roddy talks us through his time with the club. He discusses those dark administration days and how in his role as a PFA players rep under the disastrous Bissoni era was an eye-opening experience. Roddy goes into what the build-up was like for our last appearance in the League Cup Final and that feeling of adulation following the win. So without holding back anymore, enjoy the interview. I'm delighted to welcome 3rd Division and League Cup winning goalkeeper Roddy McKenzie onto the podcast. Roddy, how you doing? How's lockdown life been treating you?
Oh, it's been terrible for me actually, but it's great to be here doing something a wee bit different. You know, it's been a long year for me. I've been shielding and not done very much, to be honest. So this is a good wee escape for me tonight.
Oh, I'm glad I can provide you with that bit of escapism. Well, it's safe to say your 2 spells at Livy weren't half eventful, so we'll just dive right into it. So You joined the club from Hearts in 2003. How did that move all materialise?
I was let go by Hearts at the end of my contract, and I kind of was not doing very much actually. I was training with Partick Thistle, I trained with Stranraer, and I think the finances at clubs back in 2003 was very tight, and I'd actually played a game for Partick Thistle against Ayr United, and then I got a phone call. I think maybe that night that Alan Main had been sent off in a pre-season friendly, and he was going to be suspended, and they weren't very happy about a few other goalkeepers they had at the club, and would I mind coming and join them on the following day for a tour up to Inverness and the Highlands, and I was like, definitely, 100%, and I just went along, and that was really it for there.
Oh, you touched on Alan Main. That actually leads me perfectly on to the next question. He was obviously already at the club, so when you came in, were you made aware that there was going to be a bit of a challenge for the number 1 jersey, and was that something you were relishing when you joined?
Oh, definitely. Alan Main was a very successful goalkeeper and done really well at Livingston, and I knew I wasn't walking into a team where I was going to play every week. I had no expectation of that. I just wanted to get back playing as much as I could, and Alan, unfortunately for him, he got injured after a couple of games, and quite a serious injury to his neck, I think it was, and he never played again that season. And that's just luck. Sometimes in football, that is the way it works for a lot of boys, and you've got to take your opportunity when it comes along.
And as you say, you broke into the team, but when you signed, Marcio Maximo, the first Brazilian manager in British football, was there. Would I be right in saying his style of management was unique? Would that be a polite way of saying it? I would
definitely say it was unique. I actually quite liked him. I thought, I think being a goalkeeper, when you get a manager who does things slightly differently, it mainly affects the outfield players, and they kind of are the ones that kind of moan and groan, whereas us goalkeepers just go on with it. Roy Baines was just telling us, just concentrate on your own job, just do this, do that. And, some of his training was really good. He was definitely flamboyant in some of the things he'd done, and I don't think a few of the players took to him that much. But sometimes, if you look at that, what happened was they get rid of him, and Davy Hay came on board, and then you can only judge what happened that season based on Davy Hay coming in and taking the team after he left,
And how often did he like to try and tell folk that he coached R9 Ronaldo?
Oh, all the time. It was every training session. Ronaldo did this and he did that, and this happened and that happened. And I think some of the boys, some of the foreigners were well up from him, and they kind of knew that he was talking all this shit, to be honest.
I take it the Scottish boys sniffed him out pretty quickly then.
Pretty quickly, yeah. We've all heard that one before.
Well, his tenure didn't last too long, and as you mentioned there, Davy Hay took the reins at the club. I'm guessing the squad were quite happy when Davy came in, a guy of his experience and what he's done in the game.
Yeah, I think John Leishman was there, Davy was there. There was quite a calmness about it. I think that was one of the things that I liked about Davy. Leish was there for a few weeks or a month, I think, and then I think he went to Dunfermline. But there was definitely a calmness with Davy coming in, and you could see the boys everyone listened to what Davy said. When Davy spoke, you listened, and he just kept things dead simple. There was no miracle training methods that Davy brought in. He just brought in good, honest training, and just accepted or just expected of boys to go and work hard, do your best, and take what you get from that. And that's one of if you look at some of the managers, the great managers of the world are very calm. Don't get me wrong, you don't want to go on the wrong side of them. And there's a few times where a few boys got on the wrong side of Davy, and he shouldn't have told you. But I like the fact he was quite calm with everyone.
You don't get to the level that Davy Hay got to without having a ruthless streak, do you?
No, of course you don't. You don't take any prisoners. You get rid of folk when they don't do what they're told, and you don't play guys, and you bring in guys, and that's the way it should be. A manager is there to manage. Ultimately, no matter what line of business you're in, it's about results. And if you get people who are not giving you results, you get rid of them. You bring other people in, and I would say one thing probably with that year was it was very settled. The team was very consistent throughout the whole, even the first part of the season. You know, there wasn't a lot of changes. There was maybe 15 players who really just rotated and played, and that also helps as well. For a manager, that must be very easy then to just know there's my 15 players I've got, and there's maybe 4 or 5 others on the sidelines, and you know, it's dead easy. And if you're winning games and you're doing well, then it must be easy for a manager just to consistently just pick the very same sort of squad every week.
As you say, the lineup was so consistent that you can easily ring off the 11, you know, from that.
Oh, definitely. And you know, for me as a goalkeeper, you know, I had Marvin Andrews, Oscar, and Manu in front of me. That was my 3 centre halves in front of me, right? And for me personally, I always preferred playing a back 3. You know, I thought if you had defenders who were willing to defend, who were reasonably quick, and we had McNamee on the right and McAllister on the left, so then there's your speed to cover your wings. And you know, I was confident that Big Marvin was going to heat up everything. You know, there was no, if Marvin shouted, everyone go out the way. You know, and that was fine. You know, and then we had the 2, Manu and Oscar, who were a bit ruthless at times and a bit you don't know what they were going to do, but you know, they were solid. As a back 3, it was pretty solid for me as a goalkeeper. And that gives me confidence, and I can take confidence for them and do what I need to do, and know what I need to do. That was what I was taking from my games as well.
You talk about Marvin. I'm pretty sure I've seen Marvin almost score from his own penalty box, clearing the header.
Oh, definitely. And I think we'll probably go on to Hibs in the future in this conversation. But I remember a couple of games against the Hibs where Marvin, he was the main man. You know.
And your first season at the club, it wasn't all rosy though. The club did go into administration shortly before the League Cup semi-final against Dundee. Was it clear that there was issues behind the scenes kind of prior to that? Do you guys see it coming?
No, I don't think we did. I think there was a lot of boys that were brought in on maybe contracts that weren't as big as some of the guys that were there. And there was guys on good contracts, let's not kid ourselves on, who were there for 2 or 3 seasons before that. But, you know, to be honest, you know, Don McKean, we didn't really think very much. You just were out playing football, and I think it just came as a very sudden shock about things that were happening in businesses elsewhere and things like that. And I think everyone kind of walked in one day and all of a sudden, boof, you're in administration. You know, about, I think it was, or we're talking about administration just prior to a semi-final of a League Cup. You know, it came out of the blue, and a lot of boys I think were shocked by it.
And with it being like the day of the semi-final, how do you focus on a game when you're seeing some of your teammates and stuff like that being made redundant, you know, earlier in the day?
I think I remember we were all sitting, I think it was maybe the day before or maybe the Friday. I think it was a Monday night our semi-final was. But I remember we were all sitting around the changing room, and they were kind of just calling everyone in one by one and just saying what was happening. But I think they'd already told a few of the boys that they had to be let go. And, you know, it was heartbreaking, it really was, because, you know, I think that until you're in that position of being let go, then you can't ever compare, and you just don't know what it's like for these guys, because these guys have got contracts, they've got families and mortgages and stuff like that. And, you know, I always look at that and think we were so lucky. We were. I think that probably they kept the squad together of maybe 17 or 18 players and then a few young kids. And, you know, a couple of big earners were let go. But the majority of the squad was still pretty much there. And I think they probably realised that we had a potential to go to a cup final, which would bring in the club some money. So they were probably gambling a little bit in a realisation that if we got to the cup final, we'd get X amount of hundreds of thousands of pounds, and then that would help clear off or pay the wages of the players that were there, you know.
Yeah, and we managed to see off Dundee in the semi-final with a last gasp penalty from Derek Lilly. What was going through your head when Derek was lining up to take the spot kick?
Oh, you know, Derek was my roommate. and loads of times we'd be sitting, and one thing I always learned about him was he had nerves of steel. He really did. He knew exactly what he was doing. He'd taken penalties, I think, that season, and you know, he was really confident. And you know, if you want somebody to step up in the last minute, you want somebody who's confident, who has got a real edge to them. And I had no worries, none at all. You know, I think the relief when it went in of everybody, you know, you could see it. You could see the fans, every single person was the happiest I've ever seen Livingston fans, other than the final. You know.
And because you're a goalkeeper and you shared a room with them, did you ever trade secrets with them about taking penalties in?
I used to save all these penalties in training, so I was his confident. I dated his confidence a few times, but you know, that was one thing. You know, in my time, I had a wee secret that I kind of used for my penalties, and you know, this is going back to when I was 9 years old. Somebody told me something, and I kind of stuck by that for my whole career. And you know, I think it's harder for a penalty taker. You know, a goalkeeper 9 times. It's probably different now with the new rules. You know, we could have taken a wee gamble back then, and you know, anticipated where they're going. Whereas now you can't do that. So I think we've probably seen less penalties saved now. But you know, that was nothing I ever really, because I never played. I don't think I ever played against Derek after that, so I never gave him the opportunity to actually take a penalty into me.
And what was the week leading up to the final like? I remember the team wasn't in the best of form. I'm pretty sure we lost the game at Firhill, sort of 5-2. Does the mentality in training change? Does the media attention just rack up?
I remember the game at Firhill. I think that was probably one of the worst performances, like 11 football players on a football pitch ever. It was, I think it was maybe the next game or the two games after that, but it was horrendous. Everybody just, their heads weren't in it. I don't know why. I think it was just the relief of the administration kind of thing was maybe settling down a wee bit. I think it was a lot of people who energy had been maybe sapped in quite a few games. I'm pretty sure we maybe played in the Scottish Cup as well and done well around about that time as well. And I think there was a lot of people whose energy just, it was a horrible night at Fir Park. It was a wind. Big Marvin would probably admit himself, he just wasn't himself that night. There was a lot of guys that were just, you know, I think we put our boots on our wrong feet at times. But, you know, leading up to the cup final, I actually don't remember very much, you know, about leading up to the whole sort of game. Because I think everything was just the same. You know, Davey just kept everything the same, which was good. And, you know, nobody got ahead of themselves. But I think we all knew after, I think in this, when you look at a semi-final, you know, and you're left with Old Firm in a semi-final, all you want to do is avoid the Old Firm. You know, we pulled Dundee, Hibs pulled, I think it was at Celtic or Rangers, one of the two, because they'd beaten the other one. You just, all you're thinking about is avoid the Old Firm and then beat the team. And we knew we could beat Dundee in the semi-final. And then you're hoping that Hibs did something against Rangers or Celtic, can't remember. And they did. So you get to the final and you think, well, we're playing against Hibs. You know, and no disrespect to Hibs, but we know we could beat them. And that's the thing, you know, when you go into a game like that, your confidence is there because you know you can beat them. And you're never going to get a better chance because when the Old Firm get to finals, they tend to win them, you know, and there was no Old Firm there. So, you know, us going into a cup final, for a lot of the guys, maybe their first cup final, or they've been around cup finals, you know, there's quite a few players that I know Lee Makel had been with me at Hearts in 1998. And we both never played in that game, but we were round about it and we saw the feeling of winning that game. That was probably the greatest day out with the cup final of Livingston for me and everything that went. But leading up to the cup final, Davey just kept everything the same. It was calm. It was just, you know, it was almost as if there was no pressure, no expectation, because he just wanted us to go out and play to the best of our ability. You know?
And obviously, Davy would have experienced these cup finals multiple times as a player and a manager himself with Celtic, wouldn't he? So he would have known all the tricks of the trade.
100%. You know, and he had a great team around him. You know, Alan Preston, Billy Kirkwood, you know, George McNeil came in, but Logan was there. You know, that team, you know, we had a wee bit of banter with wee Danny, and it was a full team effort, you know. And he brought in people that had been there, you know. Billy Kirkwood at Dundee United, Alan Preston at Dundee United as well. They went through all these emotions of cup finals and leagues, and you know, and even things like being around international with youth teams and the full teams and all that. You know, you get experience for these guys that keep you calm and just you know. And even my own goalkeeping coach Roy Baines, you know, he was he played for Celtic and been in cup finals and all that sort of stuff. And you know, he always said, just, you know, you might have to make one save. That's all. And that might be the match winning save. That's maybe all you have to do. So, you know, it was Davy's influence, I think, was there in everybody in the coaching side, which was quite calm. Talk to players, you know.
And on to the final itself, 14th of March 2004. As you kind of mentioned, we did have an experienced group of players. Did you see this as an advantage over what was a very talented but a very young and inexperienced Hibs side?
Yeah, definitely. I think we played them in the league prior to that a couple of times, and I think maybe won one and maybe drew one and won one each. I can't remember exactly what happened, but you know, they were. And by the way, a lot of them went on to do amazing things, but this was their first time really in the cup final environment for some of them. And you know, we knew with the defence we had, the experience in the middle, David Fernandez running the show up front. You know, we knew we had the experience and a wee bit of calmness. And I think we saw in the cup final with Scott Brown running about at the end. If you watch it, you know, that kind of sums that probably summed it up a wee bit. And that our players knew. Big Marvin had played against him. We played in Easter Road, and I think it was Scott Brown was trying to get past him, and Big Marvin's just put the arm out, and he's just like, and he's like, oh, wee man, and all that sort of stuff. And you know, you've got to take these players thrive in confidence. I mean, you know the player you're up against, you're physically stronger, you can use your body, your arms to not let that person get past them. You know you're going to have a good chance at winning. You know.
You touched on Fernandez running the show. That's one of the things I remember most about the final is Scott Brown and Kevin Thompson just taking it in turns to try and kick him.
Yeah. It was like one of the Benny Hill scenes, and you know, I think, you know, David Fernandez was an exceptional player. When he had the ball at his feet, it was like he was on a sixpence. It was tight. He couldn't get off him, and the wee bit right at the end of the cup final with Scott Brown and Thompson trying to get a look at him, and I think they eventually got him. But you're like that, oh, amazing, you know.
He was an incredible player, but it was quick fire goals from Derek Lilly and Jamie McAllister that sealed the 2-0 win, and we took the trophy back to West Lothian. How long did it take for that achievement to kind of sink in as a group of players that you just made history for the football club?
God, I think we came back and we jumped on the open top bus round Livingston's 500 roundabouts, and you know, there wasn't much happening. There really wasn't much happening going along the streets. And then until we get into the ground, and the ground was, you know, there was thousands of people on the ground, and I think then, you know, just seeing the happiness and relief on these fans who have seen their club come from, you know, Meadowbank, if you want to say that, coming through Livingston, trying to generate support. And, you know, for a lot of young kids that were there who were maybe only 7 or 8 at the time, and now are adults and, you know, going to another cup final. And you could see the excitement in these young kids and their parents about this is a new club that we've just started supporting. And, you know, my cousin came from Linlithgow.
That's where I'm from as well, yeah.
He became a Livingston fan almost. And and he would go to all the games, and you know, to see the guys go, oh, this is my team winning a cup, which, you know, let's be honest, there's not many teams that will win a cup other than Rangers and Celtic, and then you're going to have on Sunday, you're going to have obviously another team out with the Old Firm, but it doesn't happen very often. And you know, when these fans win it, you know, you can see this relief. And you know, it happened to me as well when I was going back to 1995 when I was at St Mirren.
Yeah.
You know, I was involved in the cup final and we won it, and that was the first trophy they'd ever won. And okay, they had about 1,000 fans or 1,500 fans, but you could see that this was the most important thing for some of these supporters that has ever happened in the history of being a supporter of the club. You know, and if you look at 2004, winning that cup final is probably the same for a lot of these fans then as well. You know?
Yeah.
And for us to sink in, oh God, I don't know. You know, I remember David McNamee cycling up and down in the park on a bike.
Where did he get the bike? I've always wondered where he got the bike.
It was actually used for some of the injured players. So what would happen is there'd maybe 2 bikes in the changing room that any of the injured players, because they've got all those wee trails around Livingston.
Yeah.
And they would say, right, just go for a 15-minute cycle round the wee trails. But you know, I don't remember very much of the big massive party we had that night. Like none of us probably will. But I think it probably sunk in quite quick. You know, I think that people realised that it was an amazing achievement, and I think it's one of those things. We got a reunion not that long ago, and it was great. It was good to see everybody again, and you never forget all the wee stories. And then somebody says something you've forgotten about, and you know, there's always something that comes up. But it was brilliant.
You just touched on that there. I take it you guys still regularly reminisce about that day, because I mean, I was 12 years old when Livy won the cup, and at the time it was almost like that natural progression that the club was going on.
Yeah.
And you almost think that's going to become a regular thing.
I don't see many of the guys actually. I saw Button. I was actually away seeing Button just last year for about something, but I think it's one of those things you never sort of not talk to anyone. It's just sometimes you're all going different ways now that you're doing things differently, and you know, and even trying to get back to the club. You know, last year I was due back at the club for the Hearts game. I was invited along. I thought, well, that'd be great, and I think the game was the 25th of March.
It was the game we got. I was buzzing because she was like, the games will still go ahead this week, and I was like, yes, we've still got one more game. And then she was like, nah, Nicola Sturgeon put it on.
I was raging because I've only been back to Livingston a few times, and I was actually raging because I thought I was my old team Hearts as well. You know, they're a good one to go back to. But you know, I think the guys, you know, there was a few foreigners who we're all on Facebook. That's the thing. You know, we all keep a tagging each other on Facebook, and you know, it's one of those things. In 40 years, we'll still get back together and we'll still talk about the cup final. You know, and
at the end of that season, classic of your spell at Livy, it would be a summer of change and upheaval. Pierce Flynn took over the club, several of the cup winning squad left, and Davy Hay was replaced by Alan Preston. What was the mood like amongst the players at that point?
I think the mood was okay. I think we realised that some of the players had options to go as well. You know, there was people who contracts were maybe up for renewal, or they had another year, but obviously their wages were a wee bit too high, and they were given that option to leave. And I totally get it. Why would you not? But also, when you've got a team that wins something, suddenly your players become hot property almost. You know, they want people think, oh, we could do with a player like that. And Marvin left, and Jamie left, and a few others left, and you know, a lot of the guys as well had clauses in their contract and things like that. But the mood was fine. I didn't think there was ever a major problem with the mood. I think that Alan came in, and he brought his own style in, and it was good. I mean, you know, I think as a goalkeeper, you sometimes you're a wee bit detached from what a manager is trying to do with the outfield players. You know, you're just kind of there to concentrate on your job. And but you know, Pierce was a businessman, Vivian Kyles, you know, two highly successful people who obviously run companies to make money, and I think they wanted to do things a bit differently as well. You know, I stay in Hamilton, and Vivian Kyles is the chief executive of the racecourse.
Right.
I see what they do down there, and trying to use the racecourse for different things all the time, concerts, and yes, you've got a race meeting on, but then you've got GLS playing, or you've got girl bands or something like that, and you think, well, that's what she was trying to achieve. And that's what I think what they were hoping to do with having the stadium, is use it much more often for other things rather than once a week for a game of football. And I could see it. I could see their foresight in the way they wanted to try and take the club. And I'm not a business person at that degree, so you know, they've obviously crunched the numbers and thought that was the interest of what they thought the locality probably needed. You know.
Yeah, and it would be a season of kind of struggle after that euphoric moment of winning the League Cup. We would be in a relegation dogfight. Alan Preston was replaced. Richard Gough came in. What is it like being in that sort of relegation scrap at the bottom of the league? What's the pressure like in that situation?
I think you know, I've been in a few towards the end of my career, and I think the thing is you sometimes playing games and you don't look like scoring. And when you don't look like scoring, as a defence and as a goalkeeper, there's always pressure on you. And if you look at teams that get relegated, the teams that get relegated are not the teams that score the most goals. They tend to be the teams that score the less goals and then concede the most.
The toxic combination of football.
That's the one. You're right, 100%. And I think that's difficult. And you know, I don't know if the balance of the team wasn't right. I know we kind of brought in quite a lot of foreigners, maybe when Richard Gough came in, you know, which I think they were good players. There was a couple of good players in there. I don't know. You know, Richard Gough and Archie, I thought did amazing. I really liked Richard Gough and Archie Knox. I had a lot of time for them. Their training was great. Richard Gough loved to talk about America and talk about his cup wins and league wins and all that, which is great. And you know, with some great nights, we actually had a couple of nights out where they were there, and it was brilliant. They were really good, and the training was good, and they somehow managed to scrape together results, and we stayed up that season, which I thought was remarkable considering. I think they went to Inverness 2 games before the end of the season or something like that. And Archie Knox came in after the game, and we think we played for the last 40 minutes of that game into a wind. The wind was blowing in my face from right to left as you look at the main stand. And I had 6 defenders parked along the 18-yard box, and I had 4 defenders about 5 yards in front of them. And all Inverness did was batter. And Archie Knox came in after that game. He went, "Never seen a game like that in my life, son. That was the worst game of football I've ever seen." But I think we won 1-0. I think
Jason Dare scored that, I'm pretty sure.
There we go. That's it. That was the one. Yeah. And that really kept us up because we needed to win that game. And Archie's like, "Yeah, there we go. That's football, son. That's football." You know.
And it would go down to the wire on the final day against Dundee. What was the relief like when the final whistle went after that? I mean, I think there was 6 minutes of added on time because Gus Behoken had got knocked out on the pitch during the game and everything like that. What was the relief like after that?
Oh, you know, I remember, I think the last minute of the game, the guys had a wee shot from just outside the box, and it's hit the post, and I've actually got a touch. But there was no cameras at the game that showed that touch, but I did. So it was a great save. And I think it went for a bad kick, and then I think about 2 seconds later, I've kicked the ball, and that was it. That was it done. But I remember that game because I remember maybe the first minute of the game, they had a shot, and it smashed me right in the face. And I was blurry, and I couldn't see, and I was like, "Oh my God." And it was probably one of the best atmospheres that I've ever had inside Livingston's ground because it was so tense. It really was. A place was packed, and that hill on the right-hand side of the main stand, that was full of fans. And I just thought, after that game, we sat in the main stand, with a wee lounge upstairs, and we sat there, and just, you know, it was so chilled out, and you could see the relief in a lot of the players, and you could see the relief in Pearson and Vivian at that time, and you know, a lot of the players probably thought there's going to be a change of personnel again. and potentially another change of manager, because I think Archie and Richard had probably said that they were only going to do it to the end of the season. So, as soon as you kind of start hearing these stories, you realise, oh my goodness, is this going to change again, and more uncertainty. And I think this is the thing, when you start going down that road of changing manager all the time, uncertainty, loads of players coming in, leaving, in and out, then you kind of then you probably expect things to be relegation type stuff, and I think that's just a natural progression of those circumstances.
Yeah, and there was one player that came in towards the end of the season that did contribute towards the Great Escape, but also was a bit of a controversial figure at the same time, was Hassan Cashley. What sort of character was he like around the place, and was he a good commercial manager as well? Because that was a part of his job.
It was amazing. Honestly, he used to get all these guys deals and all sorts of things for cars and all that. But what a player! Honestly, the ability the guy had in training and things. And when I think he came on in the game, and he's just rocked up and smashed this free kick out of the top corner. And you're like, wow! But I think the issue was that I think after the season there was all these things going on about whether he was unregistered player or should have been registered, or whatever, because he'd played for so many clubs. So there was almost a wee bit of uncertainty as if could they dock us points or whatever. Who knows? I don't know. But that's obviously Livingston saw a wee loophole we could use. I'm pretty sure every other club would have done the same thing.
Exactly, but you touched on that kind of controversy that summer. I think it properly hindered preparations for the incoming manager, which was Paul Lambert.
Yeah, definitely.
And it made it for quite a tough season, and we struggled quite a lot and eventually got relegated. Do you think that was a major contributing factor towards that season?
I think so. I think there was a lot of uncertainty over the summer. Players probably weren't signed because they didn't know whether or not they would, what potential league they could be playing in. So they probably weren't taking a gamble by signing maybe a couple of players. They thought, well, if we're in the Premier League, we can get them. If we're in the First Division, well, we can't get them, so we need to take them. So I definitely think it probably took a few weeks into the start of the season before things maybe settled down. And, the rest of that season was, to be honest, it was probably a bit of a disaster after that.
I remember one game, Roddy, and I'm sure it's a game that you won't want to remember, but it was a game at Easter Road. I think it was Lambert's second last game, and we got beat 7-0. But credit to yourself, because I think you got applauded off all four sides of the ground that night, because it could have been 20 plus if it wasn't for you between the sticks. That must have been a terrible night for yourself.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you're making saves left, right, and centre. And I think I'd made out of 7 of the goals, I'd made a save. I think the first goal I made a save, then another save, and then they scored another rebound. And when you reach 7-0, it doesn't. Any goalkeeper will say your job is to make sure your defence is sorted. And if you're making saves and saves and saves, something's not right. And Piers Flynn came in that night after that game, and he said, "Right, everyone back to the stadium." So we're on back to the stadium, And he did say that to me. He says, "You're the only person that actually did something tonight," and I don't take any applause or credit for that whatsoever, because we all win as a team, we lose as a team. You can beat 7-0, you're not right, and it's one of those things where you just get a game, you make saves, but it doesn't matter. The ball ends up in the back of the net. And for me, that's not a game I love to. That, especially when I played for Hearts, I don't want to beat off Hibs at anything. I never mind 7-0 at Easter Road. For me, that was a very low point in my career. That would never happen. I don't know, I can't see too much about that. Still raging.
Well, after that season, you did leave the club to move on to Dunfermline, but you did rejoin the club a couple of years later in 2008 when the club was in the First Division under new Italian ownership. Now, we started off that season fantastically well, but Roberto Landi then made a claim about splitting the old firm. I'm going to guess that the Scottish boys kind of thought, "Oh God, this is going to be a disaster."
There's another one. I think, I joined. It's funny. I joined again, I'd actually been out injured for a year. I got injured when I was at Dunfermline the year before, and I'd actually chucked football altogether, started my own business, and I was actually in Arran at a wedding, and Davy Hay phoned me up, and he says, Roddy, I need you tomorrow. This is a Friday. He says, I need you tomorrow if you're about. I says, Davy, I'm in Arran. I'm at a wedding. He went, no, I need you to come and play in a game. I went, Davy, I've not played football in a year. You know, I haven't trained, I haven't done anything. You know, I started my personal training business, but I'd done triathlons and things like that, and became really fit, but I hadn't caught a ball, I hadn't done anything. I says, Davy, I'm in Arran, but I'll speak to you next week. So I said to my wife, my girlfriend at the time, I says, they want me playing a game tomorrow. I'm not going, I'm steaming. It was Friday. Friday night. I think what happened was the Italian goalkeeper that signed wasn't happy and just left. So they were left without a goalkeeper for a game. I'm like, so anyway, I phoned Davy the following week. I says, what is it? He said, listen, how are you fit? How are you looking? Are you fit? I said, I'm fit. I've just come to train. He says, well, come in and do a bit of training. Let's see what happens. Right? We've got a couple of weeks. I says, right, that's fine. I'll come in, right? And we had Roberto Landi in with a goalkeeping coach, an Italian goalkeeping coach, and with this mad fitness guy, sports scientist, right? I can't remember his name, but he was brilliant. I loved him, right? I like all that stuff. And I went my first training session, and they absolutely destroyed me. They had these cold and all that, and this mad Italian goalkeeping coach has got me diving about like a maddie, right? And then the fitness coach is like, right, go again. And I was like, oh my God. It was like treacle, the ground was sand, you name it, there was nothing. And I remember the mad chairman turns up and he introduced himself and all that sort of stuff. And I'm trying to talk, and they're like, right, go again. And I was like, oh God. And I tell you what, I get battered. I probably get battered for 2 weeks solid to get myself back into shape. Because when you're a goalkeeper, when you've not done it for a wee while, it just doesn't come back like that. It takes you a good couple of weeks. And, you know, I hadn't kicked the ball. My injury was all about my kicking. And I just thought, oh no, I dreaded it. I really dreaded it. And I think this was the start of August. And then I signed Queen of South for me. Queen of South actually phoned me up and says, look, we need you to play it tomorrow night in Europe. I'm like, what? So I walked in. It was funny because I walked in and I went back to Roberto Landi and I said to him, I says, listen, Roberto, I've been offered a contract at Queen of South. They want me to play tomorrow night in Europe and they need to know by 5 o'clock tonight to get me signed and I'll play. They've offered me a 2-year deal. Right? I was lying through my teeth, but they had phoned me and they wanted me to sign. Right? I went, oh, right. So anyway, I went in and blagged it to him. He went like, 2 minutes. So he went up the stairs to the chairman and he says, okay, go see chairman. So I went to the chairman. I says, listen, okay, so Queen of South want to sign me. So I need to let them know by 5 o'clock. This is maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon now. And he says, okay, so he says, we know what you were on at the last time you were here. I went, okay. I says, I'll tell you what. Well, if you give me that, I'll sign. He went, no. I says, I'll tell you what. Give me that and make it 2 years and I'll sign. I went, oh, okay. Remember, I hadn't kicked a ball. I hadn't played in a game. I hadn't done anything. I just trained. I was like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, oh, here we go. He's going to say no. And he went, okay, sign. Right? So I signed a 2-year deal. It was a cracking deal for me. It really was. And I went outside, I phoned my wife, I went, you're never going to believe this. Just signed a 2-year deal. I just went in and blagged it. I got it. I got what I was looking for. Both. I was happy as Larry. And obviously, all the problems started straight after that. But you're right, Roberto Landi thought, oh, I'm the man to put Livingston in the Champions League and win the title and all that sort of stuff. And, hey, you got a dream, haven't you?
I remember speaking to Jason Talbot about that a couple of months back, and he was like, because I'd just come up from England, I didn't quite see the big deal in it, but he was like, I could just tell off the Scottish guys' reactions that this was just utterly insane what he just came out with.
And you know, he was another one. He had some really good coaches, and they did things a wee bit differently. They trained in the afternoon, and they've done a lot of core work, a lot of things that maybe some of the Scottish boys weren't that keen on. You know, things like picking kids up to school that was maybe going to interfere with that kind of stuff. And you know, I enjoyed it. I thought his training was good, and I think that, you know, we probably just lacked a little bit of numbers more than anything. You know, in that sort of season. But no, I enjoyed it. I thought his training was good and it was different. But then I'm dealing with a mad Italian goalkeeping coach who I loved his training. I thought his training was really good as well. So, you know.
And obviously, you'd been there the first time the club went into administration. When did the warning signs start to creep up that season?
I would probably say about October time. I think. I think one of the things that I always remember from contracts and things like that, because I was involved with the PFA, we always got to check contracts and things like that. And it's small things like dates and when you get paid. You know, we were due to get paid on like the last Friday of the month, right? So last Friday of the month could be the 25th. And then it was our wages when they paid me the 25th. And the boys are coming to me because I was a rep for the PFA saying, listen, you've not been paid. I went, right, okay. I'll go and speak to the manager. So I went and spoke to the manager, says, listen, we've not been paid on time. So manager went to the chairman, blah, blah, blah. He said, oh, okay, no, we're just transferring banks. That old one, yeah, we're transferring banks. Right, okay. So we gave that benefit of the doubt. And then the following month, myself, Dave Mackay, we're starting to get a wee bit concerned about a few things, just not being right. And I remember probably around about just at the start of December, things then sort of became a wee bit more heated with the chairman. Chairman was coming in and said, no, you get paid on the last day of the month. And we were like, no, we get paid on the last Friday of the month. Now, people have got bills and all that sort of stuff that kind of come out at certain times. And then I think it was the start of December. I think that was probably the time when they didn't pay us in time. It was into December, maybe the 3rd or the 4th. And they used these excuses about, oh, we're just waiting for money to transfer in, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit, right? And then I think after that, we kind of knew something's not right here. Coming up to Christmas, I don't think we get paid that month at all until about the 8th of January. And it was guys who were now seriously struggling. You know, they had no money for Christmas. And remember, these guys don't earn a lot of money. At that time, there wasn't a lot of, you're not talking to guys earning £100,000. You're talking about guys earning, £400 or £500 a week for some of them. And even then, some of them even less, young boys who were earning £100, £150 and stuff like that, not getting any money for Christmas, nobody to buy presents and stuff like that. I mean, we kind of knew then, and we kind of said at the time with all the experienced players, speaking to Fraser Wishart, and I had 3 Argentinian guys come to me saying they were getting chucked out of their house because the rent hadn't been paid by the club, and we kind of knew then that things weren't right, and there was a lot of lies being told by certain people, and I remember getting into a boardroom, myself, David Hay, and the manager, who's the manager? Oh,
Paul Hegarty.
Paul Hegarty, there we go. And sitting down with the chairman, and he's threatening me. He's threatening me, saying, "You do not speak to the PFA." I says, "I'll speak to the PFA. I want to speak to the PFA." I'm the PFA rep, and I'm also I was on the board at the time of the PFA. And I said, "I'll speak to the PFA if I think that players aren't being treated right." And you can't do that. You can't not pay players on time. You can't not do this. And it was funny. That was a meeting where I'll never forget what happened in that meeting. And I thought at that time, something's not right here. And then it really was. You know what? We had actually threatened not to play on several occasions, and I actually probably worked. I think it was like home game against Ross County, where we said if we do not get paid by 3:00 on Friday, we're not playing tomorrow. And we were genuinely serious. We really were. We just thought at some point you have to draw the line, because, to be honest, the Scottish FA were doing nothing about this. We had written a letter to them, the players had signed it, and the PFA did nothing. They weren't interested. They were just saying, "Oh no, we'll just keep an eye on it." Okay, but our mortgages aren't getting paid, bills aren't getting paid. So what do we do about it? So we just decided we're not going to pay. And funnily enough, we get paid at 3:00 on Friday afternoon. It was a home game, and they knew that was the revenue they needed.
The bank was working fine that day, wasn't it?
Oh, of course it was, yeah.
Well, it was. I mean, you've already alluded to it, but it was another dramatic summer in your spell at Livy, which saw the club saved from going out of business. But they did find themselves getting demoted to the third division. Just how bad were things behind the scenes that summer?
I think we were all really worried. You know, the new owners came in, but you know they were fantastic. They really were. They looked after everybody at the club. You know, there wasn't a week or a month where the players didn't get paid. Everyone get paid. As far as I'm aware, every penny they were due from the time when the Italians were in, and it was good. You know, I actually thought it was a good atmosphere, even though we'd been demoted a couple of divisions. All right, you could say we shouldn't have been. That were the rules. That's the rules that they applied to us, and we had to abide by those rules. And we went down into the bottom division, and you know, with a good group of players, which were in theory a first division group of players. Yeah. We brought in a few players as well. You know, picked up some really good, experienced players who could do a job. And let's be honest, we robbed that league very, very simply. You know, by being fitter, stronger, a wee bit more tactically aware. But as a group of players, I always thought we had a really good chemistry of players for that division. And you know, that was a team that just added a few and then went up the divisions again in the first division.
And I mean that one of the first games I remember after the club was taken over was an away cup tie at Clifton Hill against Albion Rovers. And I remember getting beat 3-0, but I just remember there was about 700-800 Livy fans there that day that genuinely couldn't have gave a jot about the score. Yeah. It was just the fact that they still had a team that was going out in the park and playing games. It was just that relief that the club was still there.
I think there was a lot of doubt whether that game was going to actually take place. To be honest, there was a lot of things that needed to be ironed out behind the scenes, and even silly wee things like insurance for players and all that sort of stuff. I think that was one of the things. And I remember the game, I think it was a roasting whole game. I think it was, you know, I think that they scored quite early with a freakish own goal, as far as I'm aware. And that was probably, that game probably just came a wee bit too early, in the sense that the players were still kind of getting back into the fitness and mentality of, do we still have a club and do we still have a job kind of thing. You know, even though they were saved, there were still a lot of things going on in the background which weren't quite clear about whether the club was actually probably going to survive even in the third division, you know. But the group of people that came in, you know, at the time, obviously put their money in and were able to give the guarantees in which the league needed, and to be able for the club to be able to fulfil the fixtures that season. You know, there was a lot of guarantees that were having to be put up, and money that had to be lodged with the FA that time to guarantee the place in the league.
Yeah, and Gary Boland obviously managed to put a team on the park, and things kind of started to settle down, and we did go on to win the league. There was a lot of younger players coming through at that period as well, and there was a number of young talents that came through over your two spells at Livy. Was there any of those kind of youngsters that you thought, when you first trained with them, thought, by the way, they've got something about them, they're going to go far?
I think there was a lot. You know, you could see people like Graham Dorrans and Snoddy that had a wee bit of cheekiness about them. And I think sometimes when you're a young player, you need to have the ability, but you need something about you that gives you that wee edge. And it's a wee confidence. And sometimes young players come through because of things like administrations and relegations, where you've got no choice but to put these guys on the park. And you know, but even like Keegan Jacobs and that, you know, there was good players, but Livingston always produced a good standard of youth player, I think. And you know, I remember, I think Big Stranraer, I think maybe all the Keegan, the Jacobs brothers all played in one game, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic to see that it's all right having a youth system, but if you don't believe in the players in the youth system to play in your first team, there's no point in having a youth system, is there? You know, and I think Livingston managers over the years have always believed that these players are good enough to play in the first team. Because if they're not, then the guys that are coaching them obviously aren't good enough to coach them to get them into the first team. So you know. But I mean, there's just a couple of young players, but you can see how well they've done as well in their careers, you know. And that was, you know, going back even 2003, 2004 with these young players, you know.
Yeah, and as I kind of mentioned, we did go on to win the league that year, but it was a fairy tale ending for yourself and your time at Livy, with the point being secured at home to Berwick with the last minute penalty save. You definitely meant that one, to leave the legs dangling out to save that, didn't you?
I'll tell you a funny story, right? It was my mate Stuart Callahan that took the penalty. We grew up at Hearts together for probably the ages of maybe 13 or 14. And I always said he was the worst penalty taker in the world. And left footers, never trust left footers with penalties. And I always knew, I told you earlier on, that my system, which was I would always go to my left. If it was a left footer and it's a tense moment in a game, if it's a really one of those, they need to score, something that happens in you, it's close, I always believe a left footer is going to go to my left, right? So I'll always take a chance and save it, or try and save it. And do you know what? I thought for myself, after that was, I came off the park that night, we won the league, and I thought to myself, that's me. I've just decided that's, I actually thought at that time that was me just going to retire. I really did. I thought, I've had enough. You know, my injury was not great. I was kind of losing a little bit of my sharpness and my speed, and I felt that way. I felt, having played, even though I was in the third division a full season, I just felt training every day on AstroTurf, and I wasn't doing myself any justice. And I thought, you know what, I've had enough. And you know, Gary Bowen asked me, I think it was 2 games to go or a few games to go in that season. Yeah. And he asked me, right, do you want to play? And I said, you know what, give the young boys a shot, give Craig and Dan a wee chance to play in games that are they're pressure. There's no pressure on them, and you go and see what they're about, because these are the future of the young guys at the club, and you've got to know whether these guys can play in the first team. Because when I was at Hearts, when I was young, I got that opportunity towards the end of seasons, and for me, it was far more important for them to get their opportunity than it was for me to, you know, wave my hands in the air and go, hey, see you later, guys, and all that, carry on, you know. It's but it was I always knew I was going to save that penalty. You know, that was a given.
It's a perfect ending for a goalkeeper, isn't it? But you did get your moment to do the wee wave to the fans at Keegan Jacobs' testimonial. You made a little cameo. That must have been good, getting to, you know, play again with some of the guys that you were so successful with over your spells at Libby. It
was brilliant. It was probably one of the greatest days for me in the last few years, really, because I don't train a lot goalkeeping wise now, but I still love meeting up with some of the goalkeepers, and you know, Neil Alexander, myself, Dan Jameson were doing a wee bit before the game. We were out about an hour before the game, and honestly, we were battering balls and kicking and striking, and you know, there is a wee thing of, you know, goalkeepers have a bit of pride and not dropping the ball, and you know, making sure you're catching the ball correctly and diving and things like that. And it was brilliant. It really was good. And you know, I'd actually just done an Ironman. You know, that was one of the things I was doing. And I text Keegan, or I can't remember, maybe Robert Winters, whoever was organising at the time, I can't remember. And I says, listen, I came back on the Sunday. So I came back from the holiday on the Wednesday, and I was playing in this game on the Sunday. And I said, I might not be able to do, because the last time I did an Ironman, I couldn't move for about a week. Right? But I actually felt really good. And I started diving a bit. I thought, oh, I feel all right, I can do this, I don't bother. And it was great. It was really good. It was great seeing all the supporters again. And you know, Keegan was a fantastic young player, and you know, he did really well at Livingston. He really did. Probably if you were put in a Hall of Fame of Livingston players, I think definitely Keegan would be right up there. But it was great meeting some of the old guys again, and you could see he's like Stuart Lovell. You know, I think it was the first half of the game. You could see the old players still had the wee bit of touches and that wee bit of experience. It wasn't ability that we kind of lost the goals. It was fitness. You know, to run back. You know what I mean?
I remember Sheldon Jacobs telling me, he was like, I'm going to need to play the majority of the game because I'm the only left footer, left back. And he was like, I haven't kicked the ball in 3 years.
Yeah. But you know, it's one of those things. I went back and I played a little bit over 35s after kind of playing, but I played at centre half because I thought, you know, you miss that bit of banter in the dressing room. When you chunk your career, I'm lucky I'm in the fitness industry with young guys that you still get a wee bit of banter, but you miss, the football chat and all that sort of stuff,
And I'm going to guess, Roddy, can we expect you to be watching the League Cup final against St Johnstone and backing the team?
100%. I think they've done great this season. I think they have. Since the new manager's come in and took over, he's certainly brought something that has solidified the team, and they're winning games and they're winning good games. And this is a great opportunity for them. I really think that we had the same opportunity in 2004. And no disrespect to St Johnstone, they're a good team, they're a good manager. I know the manager, he's a good, really good manager, but you're never going to get a better chance to win a cup final. They don't come along very often. If there was any advice I would say to these guys is go and win the game. Don't think, we'll just sit here and take it easy. Because if you get on top in a game like that, you'll win that game. Your confidence will come. It's a big pitch. Players get tired, but I think they've got a great opportunity. And I'll be sitting in my Livy. Well, my Livy strip won't fit me anymore, but I'll get the scarf out.
Well, Roddy, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat to you this evening. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about your time at the club. It goes without saying you're an absolute legend at Livingston, and all the boys from Top Livy wish you the best for the future.
Thank you very much. Come on, Livy. Come on. Bring the cup home.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livy. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. So either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Andy said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livy to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivypodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we have done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks again for tuning in. A very special thank you to Roddy McKenzie, who was a wonderful guest to kickstart an exciting week, not only for the club, but for us as well. We'll continue our build up to Sunday's final with another special episode midweek as we welcome a further Cup Final special guest onto the podcast. And we also get a St Johnstone fan's perspective leading up to the big game. So tune in then. But for now, thank you all for listening. We hope you have a great week. And let's enjoy supporting the Lothian's finest football club.
A love will never die. West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Hampden Park. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Hampden Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the Premier League.